Let's dive into the pace the White Sox are currently on toward finishing as a historically bad team with my guest next on Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert of Southside Showdown, part of the Fan Side of the network. You can check out my written content at SouthsideShowdown.com, and also I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox. Also follow or subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. And this episode of Locked On White Sox is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Check out Booking.com for your stay today. Well, the Chicago White Sox are on pace to exceed 100 losses for the second straight season. Losing 101 games last year, well, that was a surprise. Losing around the same number of games this year was to be expected coming to the season, but I don't think anyone could see this being an historically awful pace that the Sox are on when it comes to losing. This team is on pace to be the worst team in the franchise's 124-year history. Again, 124 years. And they could make some Major League history with how many games they might lose. And the guy that is tracking the pace that the White Sox are on, which would be the worst team in MLB history, is SouthsideSox.com editor Brett Ballantini. Right? I got that last name correctly?
It's close enough, Todd. It's close enough. I don't have an easy name like you.
Yeah. He joins me now, and you've been tracking this, and you do a great job on SouthsideSox.com. But, Brett, some folks may have left X, formerly Twitter, or they've just checked out, and they sometimes come in and check back in, maybe whether it's your site, my show, your podcast, that type of stuff. So what is the current historically bad pace the Sox are on when it comes to the losses this season?
Well, once I realized we're leading off here, I had to dig out all my notes. It just used to be scratch paper. I think I started doing this at 2-13. So it's been a while. Yeah. And they haven't disappointed me.
Looking forward to your novel, by the way. I mean, I think you should write a book about this.
It's
how bad the season is.
Yeah. It's a Groundhog Day sort of thing. Well, we're 97 games into this season. They're 43 under. They've been on a historically worst start for the White Sox pretty much since about that game, let's say 15 or so. So that's the part of this that felt like it was important to have to be tracking, because we're talking about, it's not fun to revel in this stuff, but it is historic. And again, they really haven't, there's been times where it seemed like, okay, they finally, just like that 500 season, the second La Russa season, we're like, okay, they're 500 all year. No one's running away in the division. Okay, one 5-game stretch is going to change this and make them a playoff team, right? One 5-game stretch here, I guess an actual winning streak could sort of break all this stuff down. But they're basically 6 games worse than any other team in White Sox history. And there have been some bad ones. I mean, it's easy in this century to be like, well, yeah, the White Sox are they're a laughingstock. They're horrible. That's not the case. They're traditionally a very strong team. Post-Black Sox to Go-Go Sox, really bad era. And now apparently this decade, post-World Series, really bad era. So it still is a standout that, among some pretty bad teams, this is head and shoulders worse.
Yeah, I mean, I started becoming my first conscious memory of being a huge hardcore White Sox fan, and when my dad started taking to me, was 1989. And that was a terrible team. And then they just turned things around, obviously, in 1990. But, I mean, this is nobody can say that they've seen something as worse as this. I mean, they're on pace to potentially, as you've been tracking, to potentially, they may catch the Mets, correct?
Yeah, they are within 3 games at the break, I think. 2 games of Detroit being the worst actual 162 games played. Mets are slightly worse for a 162-game season, although somehow they didn't play a couple games, so they had 160. So those two are sort of neck and neck as the standard in the modern era, and the Sox are right there. They're not ahead. They were briefly, They're not ahead, but they're right there. And given what's probably coming in the second half, it's going to get tighter, not looser.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that in the second segment. But the expected record has the Sox supposed to be having 8 more wins. Dan Bernstein of The Score, and that was the show that pointed out your tracking of this, Bernstein and Holmes. He pointed out that the Sox are probably bad, unlucky, and poorly led. Which of the 3 do you think is the biggest contributor to having 71 losses at the All-Star break?
You'd be tempted to say unlucky because they've been so close. Their run differential is out of whack with what the record is. I mean, the run differential is just tied for 47th worst start in Major League history, which doesn't sound great, but compared to tied for the 17th worst start in Major League history, yeah, there's something out of whack there. You're tempted to say unlucky. You could choose that. Obviously, we know the talent is really bad too. But I mean, if you're going to pick one of those 3 broad categories, I think one of them had to do with leadership. I mean, if you're going to take that all the way up to the front office, they made this team. They tried to sell it to fans as a team that could compete. They still, I don't know if they've still said the word. I guess Getz has maybe accidentally said the word rebuild. He didn't say it before he said how much he hated the team.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm going to say it is a failure of leadership, and that obviously comes down to Pedro Grifol as well. Last year, I don't think he had as bad a season as a manager as we all think he did. This year, though, he is having a historically bad season. Still not the worst manager is another thing I like to track, Todd. Still not the worst manager season in White Sox history, but he's up there, and I think he's going to crack top 10 with this season.
Well, he still hasn't called for a pitcher in the bullpen who wasn't even there. So that's the high water mark. Okay. He hasn't called for that yet.
True.
But, and I do agree. Like I've been hammering Pedro a lot, but I do agree. Last year, the only thing that I would knock him on was I don't think he did a good enough job of stepping up right away when the clubhouse became a mess. He kind of did say, hey, I kind of stepped back. Like you're supposed to be in charge. That is your job. But you're right. Then I don't think they had the horses for his type of fast team. But then they bring in the players to be fast, for his acronym, and they can't even do that. Mm-hmm. And did you think it was ever possible the Sox could be this bad and not on purpose? Because remember, they did some tanking last decade. This was not supposed to be on purpose. As you said, they were supposed to be competitive. Or not competitive, but they were supposed to not be historically bad.
Yeah. We did our site predictions, maybe 20 of us before the season. I actually wasn't the lowest predictor. A few years ago, I was the only one not to pick them in the playoffs. So I can tend to be tough on the team, as a veteran fan should be, as you know, Todd.
Yeah.
But I had him at 108. I did think they'd break the record. I had him at 108. So in a way, I could say, oh, yeah, I thought they'd be. Well, 108 isn't the pace anymore. So, no, I didn't actually think they could crack 110. And yeah, it's going to be work for them not to do that. If the team stays the same, and we're going to talk about that, but if the team stays the same, it's going to be hard for them to not crack 110. And with what is likely, they're going to get better, very unlikely going to get better. So yeah, 110 is sort of like a given. That's nuts. Who would have? I mean, you got to be really grizzled. And frankly, a fan who shouldn't be a fan anymore, if you think this team, even this team, was going to lose 110 plus going into the season.
Yeah, I mean, I had a feeling it was going to, as I said in my intro, probably 100 losses was expected, but I didn't think they were going to be the worst team ever in franchise history for 124 years. And the reason why Brett and I are both giggling is I think that's the only thing you can do right now to get through this. All right, Brett is kind enough to spend the entire show with me. I want to talk about the Sox trade rumors and what they might do to the already damaged public perception of the team next on Locked On White Sox. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, Your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. And with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. And the Chicago White Sox might be terrible this season, but it is still professional baseball being played at Guaranteed Rate Field. And the end of the month, we'll have the first place Seattle Mariners in town. You still have the Chicago Cubs and the New York Yankees coming to the South Side August 9th through the 14th. The crosstown rivalry is still fun to watch live, and the Yankees are always an attraction. And, hey, they might have Garrett Crochet. So there are plenty of reasons to still catch the game live. That is why, if you want to take in a game, use the Game Time app. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. They got zone deals. Save even more when you choose a section and let Game Time choose the seats. They take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest sports stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And it's the final day of the All-Star break for the White Sox. They're back in action tomorrow against the Kansas City Royals. The first pitch tomorrow is at 7:10 p.m. Central. Catch every pitch of the White Sox hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search White Sox. And welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter, and thank you for making the show your first listen. Lots of great White Sox podcasts out there, like Brett, the podcast you host, right? Southside Sox, right?
Yep. We do the Sox Populi and Fans First Sports Network. We got a bunch of them in our little umbrella, but yeah, the mothership. It's been we've been really trickling the episodes out this year. It's been hard to do, as I imagine a guy who does a daily podcast might be feeling about right now.
Yeah, I haven't seen the cool like you put together some really cool thumbnails that you put on X, formerly Twitter. I haven't really seen a lot of them, so I mean, they're hopefully we get some more out soon, right?
Yeah, I mean, come on. I guess we got to kick it back up. It's tough though. Again, as you more than I can speak to, it's tough to keep the excitement level up. Even the novelty of this season gives you pause, and I mean, you run out of gas on that. I mean, we're not celebrating it. Who wants to really talk about excitedly a brighter future that's not right around the corner, or just having to slog out the last 3 months, 2+ months of the season? It's brutal. And listen, hats off to you, Todd, for doing this and grinding it out, because this is not easy.
Hey, I'm here. As I said, I survived the 1989 season. I survived the 95 strike. And for some reason, I have this blind loyalty to this this team. As I explained on my first show, like, my dad was kind of a very strict disciplinarian type of guy. So the only place that I had where I was never like terrified of him like destroying me was at White Sox, because I was raised in the 80s, late 90s, where it was like, Dad's home. Like, it was the Bill Burr comedy routine where like that was me. So that's why I still have this irrational fear. And I figured, hey, I'll be here for people just like me. If the Sox trade Garrett Crochet and Luis Robert Jr., do you think that might be it, though, for the Sox fan base who are not the diehards of the diehards?
I don't know. You just laid it out, Todd, and I'm here with you. What am I doing deciding to talk to you about this team? I mean, we are stuck with them. We're not going to pick a different team. We're probably not going to quit baseball. It was interesting to see the reactions to some of the social media stuff where the White Sox would say, "Hey, this is our number one pick. This is our sandwich pick." And most of the comments are, "Oh, so in 5 years you can trade them." And I get the sentiment, of course, and especially as we're talking about Garrett Crochet being, even the sexier star right now than Luis Robert. being a guy who's just, okay, he's here for a season, he's here for a few seasons, and he's gone. And so why wouldn't it be different with this next wave of talent? I think the fans who are that bitter are already there. I don't think a couple more trades are gonna do it, especially if those moves are made to bring in a haul, let's say akin to a Dylan Cease. That's worked out pretty nicely, if you want to call it that, in quotes, for the White Sox. If the trades are smart, I mean, you can only get so angry. Where's the team going? You can get mad that you're trading Garrett. Crochet is probably going to have to be wound down in the second half anyhow. What? So the Sox lose 120 instead of 110. I mean, we're starting to split hairs in this lost season if you're going to get too angry about any trades at the deadline.
Yeah, like, for example, I'm a diehard let's not trade Crochet, but I'm with you is I already know when he's not going to be pitching in September. I don't want him to pitch in September. So I already know that there's nothing worth watching. But again, if you can mitigate it by saying, if Baltimore said, yeah, here's Colby Mayo, I would be fine with that trade, or Spencer Jones, those types of guys. Although I think Spencer Jones from the Yankees is kind of overrated. Like, that's a guy that it's like, it sounds like he's the sacred cow for the Yankees. And I'm like, he's your second best prospect. Like,
and the Sox keep asking about him, so they're doing something to keep that inflated too, because he's always on the list. So
he's always on the list on that. But circling back to the historically bad pace that they're on, if they trade Crochet and LRJ along with Fetty and the rest of the tradable vets, do you think that clinches the Sox topping the 62 Mets and the 03 Tigers?
I mean, on paper, it certainly does. I mean, as it is, let's even say they're not traded, there's still a decent chance. Fetty going to keep it up the way he is. I mean, he's actually been, war-wise, a touch better than Crochet. They're right, they're neck and neck. That's extraordinary, and it's something that gets to actually pat himself. I don't usually suggest this, certainly not in public, Todd, but I mean, pat himself on the back for him. It's a great find. Yeah, let's face it, because even if you were to offset those trades with guys coming up, you have to do that. I mean, it's going to be guys from AAA, guys from AA coming up, and say that infusion in September really creates some sort of the way 89 ended, I want to say, or certainly one of those terrible late 80s teams where it's like, wait, there's momentum for the next season, sort of playing into that incredible surprise 1990 season for the Sox. Even if you get that momentum, that's going to increase the pace a little bit. I mean, I wouldn't say it cements it, because we can't overlook the fact that there is going to be an infusion of talent. Edgar Carroll maybe comes up. Certainly Kai Busch you'd think is coming up. There's guys who might actually hit the ground, maybe not Drew Thorpe speed, but close, better than what they're running out there. Not better than Crochet or Fetty, but enough that maybe they don't. It's not I wouldn't say it's a lock, but it's looking a lot better. And of course, we're all going to be just waiting with bated breath to see that 15-game losing streak that somehow cinches it to end the season or to start September.
Yeah, I mean, although they don't have that 39 brutal game stretch of heck that they had to go through. I mean, I think, but they still have Baltimore on the schedule. They still have the Mariners. They still have some tough games, but it's not as, again, like, here's the Yankees. Oh, you have to go to Canada where you can't win. They've never won in Canada. You got to play Baltimore, Boston. You got to play the Cubs. I mean, that was the scheduling gods saying, not only are we going to make this team historically bad with all the injuries, but here, we're going to make it the most brutal way to watch baseball ever.
Sure. Counterpoint, of course, Todd, when you're the White Sox, every team on the schedule is a difficult matchup. So
I do have to stop that, because I have been saying the White Sox are the get-right team for everybody this year, except for the Cleveland Guardians.
Go figure.
And the Atlanta Braves. They
can't
get right. Do you have hope this franchise can turn things around and say a season or two with or without Robert Jr. or Crochet?
No. I mean, I'll at least take the high end on that. I could see them approaching, which is the real tricky thing with Crochet, right? You keep him around so that he, again, without an extension, you keep him around so he's a free agent about the time the team maybe creeps to 500. I could see, gosh, what are my years? 2026. That could be a 500 season, let's say. I mean, so that's not quick. I do think they have to be again, you're the White Sox in 2024. You can only look up. There's no relegation here. So, yeah, of course they're going to turn it around to some degree and some early returns. I mean, granted, it's all imports from other systems. I'm not really sold on the drafts yet, the homegrown guys per se. But, system's getting stronger. They're matriculating. The White Sox are always aggressive about bringing guys up. They're going to probably continue. They have to continue to do that. The short answer is no. But I mean, if we're saying like in this decade, yeah, of course, I would think by the end of this decade, we're getting to be a team that could see the light again. But then who knows? This front office has shown that they're willing to sort of stick a stick in the spokes to mess things up, even when it seems like there's a little bit of momentum. So, you got to even put an asterisk on this like brighter day in 2026 when they're 500 again.
Yeah, they're going to probably just bring back a certain pitcher that I want to talk about with you in the next segment, because I'm impressed with the position that you have taken and the site has. And I want to talk about that, and also that kind of that smoke in the wheel. And we'll discuss that next on Locked On White Sox. If picking more or less is your selection skill, then you should try out Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. With over 5 million active members, Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into 1,000. Prize Picks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including Illinois, Wisconsin, and Indiana. As I always tell you, my old college buddy always tells me on the text chain how much he loves using Prize Picks to make his selections, since he lives behind the cheddar curtain. And I think Prize Picks is great for how simple it is. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks for a deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. And sorry, got to get the this episode of Locked On White Sox is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. With summer travel heating up, especially travel for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you always secretly wanted to learn more about. Yes, we're talking about your rival cities with hotels, bed and breakfasts, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com. You might just find your perfect stay even in your baseball rival city. And after the All-Star break, the Sox are going to Kansas City. Why not head out and check out the Negro League Museum, get some barbecue, and cross off Kauffman Stadium off the list of stadiums you have visited. Say you've not been to Fenway Park. Sox play there in early September, so plenty of time to plan a trip, and use Booking.com to find a place to lay your head. From hotels that look over stadiums to family-friendly resorts, Booking.com has so many choices across the U.S. for your summer travel this MLB season. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. Book today on Booking.com, on the site, or in the Booking.com app. And it's the final day of the All-Star break for the White Sox. They're back in action tomorrow against the Kansas City Royals. First pitch is at 7:10 p.m. Central. Catch every pitch of the White Sox hometown broadcast with Sirius XM on the SXM app. Search White Sox. Welcome back into Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter, and thank you for joining me, Brett from Southside Sox. Brett Ballantini. Again, I'm going to keep butchering your name, and I feel bad because you're like...
That's fine. I do the same thing. It gets in your head, and so, eventually 2, 3, 4 more times of this, Todd, we'll be nailing it. Or okay, Walter, I'll do it back to you. No sweat.
I'm sorry. All right. Starting out with a question that I know that is something that I know when you start a question would say, this is not something you want to talk about. It's not always going to be the best way, but I like the stance Southside Sox is taking regarding Mike Clevinger. And I know he's hurt, but I think the stance you have taken is worth discussing. So could you just go over first, what is your guys' stance toward him?
It's a 2024 White Sox, Todd. It's going to be brutal. We're not going to want to talk about any of this, right? But here's the thing. I mean, the talent was already, the talent was already bad. White Sox and Chris Getz have made it worse. The stance is this repeat of what our stance was in 2023. White Sox made it easy. We could just repost the previous post. Oh, of course, we didn't just do that. We made it even more acidic because there's just no point in having a guy like Mike Clevinger on your roster on every level, including just simply the moral one. And I understand that this is sports and there's no morality in sports, and you do whatever it takes to win and so on. Well, that checks none of the boxes. It didn't check any of the boxes last year. It certainly doesn't in 2024. So our stance is that we do not acknowledge him. I know there are readers we have and probably fans out there who think that's childish. We do not cover him. We have written recaps that just address the game without addressing the starting pitcher. We do our pregame game threads without necessarily addressing the starting pitcher. And I understand that could be some sort of virtue signaling and opens up for criticism. But as one of my writers pointed out, Brian O'Neill said, you know what? I think the more proper way to look at this is the other side and the vice signaling of that it's okay that we can treat this guy like another player. And it makes my skin crawl, Todd, to have to see the post game or see the tweets that talk about how his velo was or his arm slot or how'd you feel out there. The idea that they are treating him, and I get it, it's the job. I've been in that job. I think I would do it differently. Easy for me to say, not in that job. And you've been there too. So the idea that we're normalizing what is a monstrous human being, and I think it's sort of indisputable. Sorry, I know that's a whole big thing here too, that we can decide to poke holes in it. Get over yourselves. There's nothing to poke a hole in here. He's a guy who should not be in the major leagues. He should certainly not be on the 2024 White Sox. It's an embarrassment. I've been a longer time fan even than you, Todd. It embarrasses me as a White Sox fan. We can't pretend, oh, well, they did disco demolition or they wore shorts or Jerry Reinsdorf is this and that, and somehow pretend that this is the same. It absolutely is not. Yes, I know they suited up Jose Canseco. Yes, I know they signed in a very bizarre move Manny Ramirez for a month. It ain't even close to the same. Don't even give me that for a second. So sorry for the long-winded answer, but it's just a reprehensible decision, and we're not going to stand by it. The way, unfortunately, we see a lot of others end up treating, and I get how you fall into this. You feel you're obligated to cover. This is a role. People want it. I'm glad to see that people do push back often when there's a little tidbit thrown out about when Mike Clevinger's coming back. I see a lot of fans saying, who cares? Or I want to know when they're getting rid of them. I'm glad to see that. And, so I know we're not the only ones.
Yeah, I mean, I had to make an editorial decision. I mean, as you know, you guys are peers, although I think I'll even admit you guys run a little bit better of a site. I actually have a lot of respect for the site. I have a lot of respect for all the sites. But yeah, I had to make an editorial decision. One of my guys wrote a piece about his contributions. I was like, I can't do it. And I had to go to my editors, and they're like, yeah, we cannot run it in its state. We had to make some edits and some changes and that type of stuff. But I wanted to talk about it because I think it's a very valuable thing that a site could say, we are not going to cover this guy. It's not just because that, we don't believe he belongs on this team because of talent, but also because he's not a good human being. And anybody who says, well, he wasn't suspended or he wasn't arrested, he accepted counseling. And to me, that's the equivalent of accepting a plea deal. That's the way I look at it. And he shouldn't be on this team. All right. So finally, you have an extensive resume of covering baseball, basketball, and hockey. The state of the Sox are currently in. Is this the worst you've ever seen from any franchise ever that you could actually say? Or have you actually said, you know what, I've seen a worse team?
Way back at the dawn of my sports writing career, Todd, I got hired into basketball as a basketball editor because the lockout ended. This would be the lockout that ushered out the champion Bulls and ushered in whatever those Chicago Bulls were. So I could be amazed and in awe of actually, they all told me, oh, you know what, you're going to be up in the rafters. You're going to be up with the retired jerseys. You're not going to have a good seat. My first game at the United Center covering the Bulls, they just ushered me right up, courtside. I mean, my jaw was on the ground, but you might understand because I was covering Cornell David, not Michael Jordan. So if there's a team that jumps to mind, it would be those god-awful, hideous, horrifying, and, more than one season, just like the White Sox are putting together now, successive triple-digit loss seasons, and maybe with no relief in sight in 2025. The Bulls had that too, and there was the same smugness. There's the same arrogance. I mean, thankfully, we didn't have to witness 162 games of it. And gosh, thankfully, the lockout season was just 50, if I recall. So the Bulls spared us a little bit, but that's the only team that comes to mind, at least in this century of covering sports, that would approach what we're seeing now. And, we don't know the end of that story. It didn't get that great, for the Bulls. It did turn around, of course. Whether the White Sox will match that seems sort of doubtful right now. So I would have to say the White Sox might have a slight inside edge of actually being the most horrifying car crash we've witnessed as Chicago sports fans. But that's the only one that really jumps to mind. I think that's an easy one to pick. There may be others. I don't follow the Bears as closely, or even the Blackhawks quite as well. But to me, yeah, the Tim Floyd era is pretty hard to get over, especially if we come from where the Bulls just came from. So from that perspective, I mean, you can't compare it. This has been a decade plus rebuild for the White Sox. So we're sort of used to the slog. There's fans who just don't even know, winning but for 21. But they're neck and neck at this point. And, the end of the story, which we're all waiting very eagerly to see how it all turns out, it doesn't look too good for the White Sox.
Yeah, but at least the Bulls ended up with the number 1 overall pick because
they did luck into that. They sure did.
The White Sox are not going to get another Holiday. I mean, he's supposed to be the number 1 overall pick next year, Ethan Holiday. They're not going to get that silver lining, and that's great. The thing is that it just jogged my mind. The other reason why I can do this is the first time I ever worked anything in sports, I was an intern at Miller Park, and it was the 2003 Milwaukee Brewers. They had just lost 100 games the year before. They still had Jeffrey Hammond on the team. That was their big free agent signing with the Miller Park money. I had to sit through a near 100-loss season then, but even then, they had hope. I didn't see it as that. And then I also had to cover the Milwaukee Bucks during the whole Herb Cole owner era, after the 2001. So I saw a team that won 15 games. I had to cover that. So imagine that. And I got paid hardly anything.
So you can't even lean on the cash. You can't even go home and just relax and luxuriate on all the cash that you just made. Yeah, that's a nice combo.
Yeah. All right, well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. But before I go, are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the shouting? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day. It's bringing the biggest sports stories without all that screaming. And Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news. Streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'll be back tomorrow to discuss the things to watch for / keys for the Sox after the All-Star break and against Kansas City. And Brett, again, thank you for joining me. Where can we find all your guys' great content?
Oh, we're at Southside Sox, but even more so these days, we're at Sox Populi over at the Fans First Sports Network. You can follow us on Twitter at Sox Populi to find out all the articles we're putting out there as well. Those are the 2 spots. Until we split into 3 or 4 next time we talk, Todd, that's going to be it.
All right, and you can leave, and if you want to leave comments today with my conversation with Brett, you can leave them on the episode page at YouTube, formerly Twitter at Todd J. Dub or at Locked On Sox. Email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.